It's nice to be here. It's a simcha of our mitzvah. It's like a wedding. To meet you all. One thing I noticed about the people in Melbourne, they're friendly, walk into the shul, they say shalom aleichem, they say hello. Other places are not that friendly, but here it's obvious, and many people who are visiting here tell me that the people are friendly, which is very important because Ahavas Yisrael is one of the keystones of the Torah, of Judaism, and something that the Rebbe emphasized again and again. And the Rebbe was the one that showed us what Ahavas Yisrael means as we get to it. There was an individual who called his mother, and he says, "Ma, how are you doing?" He says, "Not too good." He says, "What's the problem?" She says, I haven't eaten for 30 days. He says, "Why not?" He said, "Well, I didn't want to have my mouth full when you called." When's the last time, no, you called your mother, when's the last time you thought of the Rabbi? By a chassid, the chassid is somebody who thinks of the Rebbe once a year before Gimel Tammuz, etc., etc. A chassid is somebody who lives with the Rebbe. He's an extension of the Rebbe, and we'll get to that. One of the events that we remember tonight is Koach Sivan, when the Rebbe came to New York with the Rebbetzin, and my mechutin, Level Bistritsky, his parents actually were instrumental in giving the Rebbe a ticket, the last ticket on the boat to come to America. The Rebbe didn't want to accept it, but the Frierdiker Rebbe told him to take the tickets, and he accepted the tickets, and that was the last boat that left from Europe, and basically he saved his life. And because of that, the Rebbe said that when any time that he wanted to come into the Rebbe, he didn't have to ask. He didn't have to do like my mother-in-law did, Sholem. She used to call Rabbi Chadakov again and again and again, and find eventually she got me the Chiddusim, which were very difficult in the later years. There's only one time when he took advantage of that. He didn't want to bother the Rebbe. When one Friday night his father, unfortunately, had a heart attack, he ran up to the Rebbe house, and the Rebbe asked him, "What's the problem?" And he said, "My father had a heart attack." And the Rebbe turned around, and he knew that was it. He went home, and his father had unfortunately passed away. But other than that, he never took advantage of it. That's great. At least that's what he told me. If you have other stories, you share them with us. In the first year that the Rebbe, before the Rebbe accepted the Nasias, so he went into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was sitting there, sitting casually without a hat, etc., and he gave the Rebbe a pen. And the Rebbe said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Now that you're my Rebbe now." And the Rebbe just looked at him. "What are you talking about?" He says, "You're my Rebbe now." And the Rebbe laughed and he said, "Are you crazy?" Later told me, he said he had to control himself. Literally, he wouldn't laugh. He literally bit his lip And he said, the third time, you're my Rebbe. And the Rebbe became serious, put on his sack, his garter, he took his pan, and he answered his questions, etc. We're also here to commemorate a time which is difficult for Hasidim, and that's Gimel Tammuz. And if you think about it, I remember at the time of Gimel Tammuz, Moshe Shabbos, my son-in-law called me from where he lived in Los Angeles, and he told me, and obviously it was a shock. My cardiologist earlier had asked me a question, what happens when the Rebbe's not here? And I told him, there's no way. There's no way the Rebbe's not going to be here. And I think a lot of Hasidim felt like that. The Rebbe is going to be with us physically the whole time, Mashiach is going to come. And when ultimately the Rebbe wasn't here physically, it was a shock. And the first question that came to my mind is, what's going to be with Lubavitch? And you see an amazing thing. You see that people who did not meet the Rebbe. Unfortunately, I went into Yechidus many times, and I'll share with you later on my own experiences. And I'm sure people here, how many people here actually had the opportunity of going into the Rebbe for Yechidus? But many people didn't. And what you see today is an amazing thing. You see that many Bochurim who never saw the Rebbe, nevertheless, they still go on shlichus, and they have Mesiras Nefesh for the Rebbe, even though they actually never saw the Rebbe. What does that tell you? That'll tell you that the Rebbe's still here. The Rebbe's still with us. We're still with the Rebbe. And that's an amazing thing. So many years later, you'd expect that we forget. But we don't. How can we forget the Rebbe when he doesn't forget us? Because he's together with us. The purpose tonight is not just to tell you history, although is to give you maybe a little better appreciation of the Rebbe, because who can describe the Rebbe? Nobody can really describe him. He was a very private person. I can't describe the Rebbe. I can't tell you what he really was. But Nimius, I can describe to you what I saw, etc., what the Rebbe meant to me. But my purpose is not just to tell you history, but is to encourage you to strengthen your connection with the Rebbe and to do what the Rebbe wants. The bottom line is Maisa. The bottom line is action. So you may leave tonight and say, yeah, you know, I heard a lot of nice stories, etc. But the Rebbe will always say, no, to. So what's the bottom line? So let's start with the bottom line, because I know that ultimately some of you are going to leave. Now, I spent many years in training, and Rebbe told me to go into that field. And one of the worst things in training is when you see people looking at their watches, because you know they're getting bored. I'm sure that when people are talking, right, people don't do that. You look at, or somebody says, excuse me, but when is the break? And you know you have a problem. So you become very sensitive to that. As soon as you see somebody with their watch, you say, oh, there'll be a break in 5 minutes. So let's begin, first of all, with something that the Rebbe wrote for the outside of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the things that we need to do this week and on Shabbos to remember or for Gimel Tammuz. Now, because it's on Shabbos, there are certain things that we cannot do. During the week, there are things that we can do because it's on Shabbos, a number of things we cannot do, but there are many things that we can do. So let me very quickly review that. First of all, the Shabbos before the Yortzeit, Gimel Tammuz, is an inyan to have an aliyah. However, what about this week? Because this week the Yortzeit is on Shabbos itself. So therefore, if you can have an aliyah on Shabbos, this Shabbos, you should have an aliyah. And if there are too many people, for everybody to get an aliyah, you can make different minyanim, and for people to be called up in that separate minyan. A friend of mine, Dr. Blockman Risholem, who was very close to me, I was very close to him, and his son, Avrami, when he came to his bar mitzvah, so he went into the Rebbe and he said to the Rebbe, unfortunately, I couldn't get an Aliyah Shabbos morning. I had to get it Shabbos afternoon. And the Rebbe said, Adarab, on the contrary, the highest level of Shabbos is Shabbos afternoon. And usually what I do in Marshall in Toronto is I purposely don't get an Aliyah Shabbos morning, but I take it Shabbos afternoon. People don't realize the mile of Shabbos afternoon. So if you can't get it Shabbos morning, get it Shabbos afternoon, but to have an Aliyah on the outside this year. The mafta should be by the most respected member of the congregation. I won't ask you who that is. There is a Maisa where somebody in the shul said, "Would the most humble person stand up?" and everybody stood up. In terms of davening for the Amud, you know, the person at your side that you try and daven for the Amud because this is gives nachas to the neshama. Actually, when you light the outside candle, it also gives nachas to the neshama. You once asked the Rav in Toronto, but what about lighting a outside candle on Yom Tov? And he said you can do it because this has a purpose. This gives the neshama pleasure, delight. And by the way, even though it's not on the topic, one of the things we do when we say Tehillim in the morning, you say the Rebbe's Kapitel. And we know from the Semach Tzedek that when you say the Rebbe's Kapitel, it gives the Rebbe nachas. The Rebbe has pleasure. Now this year is not bad, Kufrid Ches, but next year's Kufrid Tes is going to be a real challenge. Right? So the only way we can get out of it is Mashiach's going to come.
Amen.
Right?
How you getting out of it? Who will say it?
Yeah, but won't feel bad about it.
Easy.
It'll be easy. All right. People should take an opportunity to daven at the Omid. One person can have Marav, one person Shacharis, Musaf, etc. Mincha. A Yortzeit candle, light a Yortzeit candle Friday, which lasts 24 hours. Possible the candle should beeswax. Our custom is to light 5 candles for the various levels of the Neshama by davening. Of course, you can't do it on the Shabbos, but you can light 5 before Shabbos. In the morning, you should learn chapters 24 of Mishnah's Kalim, and chapter 7 of Mishnah's Mikvosh, which you find at the end of the Siddur, which you learn for your side. After Ma'arif, part of the Maimah Boss on the Gani that I'm going to very quickly review. The first part is going to the Rebbe and his purpose in this world is reviewed. Before Shacharis, a chapter of Tanya should be studied. This should be done after Mincha as well. Give tzedakah. This year you can't give tzedakah on Shabbos, so give extra tzedakah before Shabbos. Same thing before Yom Tov. You cannot give tzedakah on Yom Tov, so you give before Yom Tov, you give for the 2 days of Yom Tov. And of course, during the day after Shacharis, Mincha, or after Shacharis, you write a pan and you give it in to the Rebbe. Of course, you can't write it on Shabbos, but you can write it on before Shabbos, put it in a mimer, put it in one of the works of the Rebbe, because as we know that Tzaddikim don't in the Boram, just like the Abish to put his essence into the Torah, so Tzaddik puts his essence into his work. So when you put a letter and you put a request into the Sikhas, into a mimer, literally you connect him with the essence of the Rebbe. And we'll mention a little bit more about that later. Also, a minhag to say Mishnayos of the Rebbe's name. There are booklets, I'm sure you have booklets here, which give you the various Mishnayos connected with the letters of the Rebbe's name. You should tell the members of your family about the Rebbe, about his mitzvot, about his importance, etc. And also to speak to other people about the Rebbe as well. One of the things that shows you the emes of Torah is that very often because of what I do, what I've done over the years, I've had contact with many non-Jews. And I kept on my desk a picture of the Rebbe. Now, in the company where I was working, you're not allowed to keep anything on the desk. I had a large picture of the Rebbe, and they never told me to take it off. And when anybody would ask him to say, who is that? I would sit them down and tell them stories of the Rebbe, and nobody ever said to me in all the years that this is not my religion. I can't listen. They were all interested in the Rebbe. And again, I'll tell you some personal stories I had in the company with both Jews and other non-Jews. And also throughout the day to speak to people, speak to especially youth about the Rebbe, youth that are observant, youth that are not observant, and try and get them to strengthen their observance. So this is some of the things we should do for the Shabbos. So I said I would very quickly review the part of the Maimah of Basal Agani. This was written by the Frierdiker Rebbe for his grandmother, for her yahrzeit. It was eventually said by the Rebbe. And the fact that this Maimah, Basal Agani, was said by the Rebbe at the beginning means that it contains the purpose of the Rebbe. And the Maimah begins, Basal Agani Achosi Kala. He says, I have come into my garden, my bridal chamber, my bride, my sister, my bride. Who is talking here? Who's talking here is the Ikeshkin. Ikeshkin means this is the level of godliness that's embedded in itself. And it says, I was here before, I'm coming back again. When am I coming back? This is the Mishkan, the dedication of the Mishkan. After all the Kabbalahs, so the Ikeshkin came back into the Mishkan and says, I'm here again. What do I mean I hear again? Where did he go? So the Rebbe explains and he says that initially the Ikeshkin was here. It was the Taxtonim, it was here. Rosh HaMashiach, etc. And then through the sin of Adam HaRishon, it descended above. That was the greatest descent from this world above to the first Rakia. And then various sins, the sin of Cain and Hevel, and the Dor Enosh, etc., etc., they ascended up to the seventh level. Who started to bring it down? It was Abraham. It wasn't Noah, it was Abraham. Because Abraham was the one who spread the knowledge of God in the world. And therefore he brought down godliness that was on the seventh level. He brought it down from the seventh to the sixth. Then Yitzchak and Yaakov, and eventually who was the last one that brought it down was Moshe. And the Rebbe says there, Moshe was the seventh, and Kol Shvivim Chavidim. All the seven is special, not because he wanted to be special, because he's connected to the first individual, connected to Abraham. So Moshe had the Koach of Abraham to spread Judaism in the world, to prepare the Jews for Torah, and his purpose was Matan Torah, to bring down Torah to the world. So we find the same parallel between the Alter Rebbe and between the Rebbe. The first Chabad Rebbe, as we all know, was the Alter Rebbe. He was special. He had a new soul. What that means, a new soul, he was not here even by the fate Adam Rishon wasn't around, but he had a new soul. His soul actually was embedded in Kesser. And why did he have a new soul? Because he did something which nobody else could have done. He was able to bring down the Chassidus of the Baal Shem Tov into Chokmah, into Sefer, so that we can internalize it. And that's what Mashiach is. When Mashiach comes, we will be able to internalize godliness. The Samek Tzedek gives an example. He says that let's say that you're standing behind a wall and you hear some people talk and you don't understand them. I used to tell when I was in the company, the secretary sometimes should be on the phone. You weren't supposed to be on the phone, and after she finished, I'd go and I'd say, do me a favor, can you speak a little louder, because it was very hard to hear what you were saying. I don't think she appreciated it. Anyway, so the Samek Tzedek says, let's say that you're trying to hear a conversation behind a wall, and you don't understand, you pick up one word, another word, etc., etc. And then after that, you're told what actually happened. Then you say, so it says like this, when Mashiach comes, there'll be two reactions. The reaction of a chassid and the reaction of a non-chassid. I don't like to call them misnagim. There's no misnagim today. I finished the time with Samek Tzedek already. He says that the non-chassid will say, when he hears chassidus from the Mashiach, he'll say, And the Chassid will say, in other words, we prepare ourselves with Chassidus or the Maimorim, etc., then we'll have a better understanding already of Chassidus of Mashiach. So that was the Alter Rebbe, Chabad, that was the beginning of the preparation for Mashiach. The Baal Shem Tov and the Mezrich Shemagid, that was the preparation to cure the Jews of their spiritual ailment that they had in those days. If you look in the beginning of Tanya, you see that there are two Haskamas. One Haskama is from Yudalei Cohen, and the other from Reb Zusha of Anipol. And why were they those two Haskamas? So there's a famous Meiser by, I always forget his name, by one of the famous Hasidim of the Mezrich Shemagid, of Ana Kalin. He found some of the Michtovim, some of the Chassidus that the Mezrich Shemagid wrote. He found it on the floor. He became very angry, and he met the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe told him the famous story about the king who had a son, and the son went away, etc., and the son became very sick. And they found that the only way to cure this son was by taking a particular diamond, crunching it up and giving the son this potion to drink. And the king said, wait, they found out that where was this diamond? This was the main diamond in the crown of the king. And they had to crunch it up and give the son to drink. And they said to the king, they said, how can you do that? You're destroying your own diamond. And the king said, without my son, what's the whole purpose of the diamond? What's the purpose of the crown? So when the Alter Rebbe told Shabbat Kalim this story, he realized that, yes, sometimes you have to take something and crunch it up. And you have to bring it down to a low level. But this is for the purpose of saving the Jew. When the Alter Rebbe came to the Mezrich Shemagid later, the Mezrich Shemagid called in these two tzaddikim. He called in Rabbi Yudalei Cohen and Reb Zusha of Anipoli, and he said to the Alter Rebbe, what happened? There was a kitzur against me l'mayla, and I know you took it away. So he told him the story, and the Alter Rebbe wondered, why did the Mezrich Shemagid call in Reb Zusha and Rabbi Yudalei Cohen? So he realized that these were the two people to give haskamas on the Tanya. And if you look at the way they actually signed their names, that was a clue or siman, the purpose of Chassidus. One was that it was a medicine for the soul. This was the purpose of the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezrich Shemagid. And the other was B'shas Pudosenu, it was connected with redemption. And that's why they were the Haskamas on Tanya. And then comes, of course, the various Rabbeim, etc., and then comes the Rebbe. So the Rebbe is Kol Shvil Chavivin, the Rebbe is the seventh in line, and just like by Moshe Rabbeinu, that was it. There was no other separate Moshe Rabbeinu after that. So the same thing for us, the Rebbe is the bottom line, that's the end. And you ask the question, but like many people ask, but the Rebbe is not here physically with us. What does that mean? So if you listen to the last the talk that they played here on Moshe Shabbos, the Rebbe said, he says, I've done all I can. Now it's while the Rebbe was with us physically, we relied on the Rebbe to bring Mashiach. But we can't do that now. And the Rebbe knew that. And therefore the Rebbe said, it's up to you. It's your job to bring Mashiach. So we all have the responsibility to do what we can, to listen to what the Rebbe told us, to bring Mashiach, and nobody is exempt. Nobody is exempt, because we're all connected with Mashiach. What was the status of Moshe Rabbeinu? He was a melech. He was a king. The Rebbe was a melech. The Rebbe was a king. Let me tell you a mice about the Alter Rebbe. Once a chassid came to the Alter Rebbe and he said, I have a problem. How come that you're so far removed from the people? People can't just go to your house and have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee. If you have friends, you can visit your friends, you sit down, have a schmooze. He said, you can't do that with you. Why not? And what did the Alter Rebbe do? He put his hand on his head, on his arm, and then he lifted it up, and he said it's like a melech. He says a king has to have distance. There has to be a distance between the king and the people. What was the Alter Rebbe doing? Why did he put his head on his hand? The Rebbe explains the Alter Rebbe had a problem. The problem is that you can interpret this intervention by the Chassid two ways. Either the Chassid was telling the Alter Rebbe, you have a problem, or the Chassid had a problem and he came to the Alter Rebbe could help him. So what did the Alter Rebbe do? He put his hand down and he looked deep within himself. And he realized it was not his problem, it was the Chassid's problem. And therefore he said to him, the reason it's like this is because it has to be like this. A melech, there is a distance. Now, does somebody want to say a niggin before I get
Hey,
It's not mine, you're not touching it. I watched it from home.
Right.
There's a lot of space, but also the sound. Except for here, I think. Anyway, could it be animal? You can't put a fish. You had a glass of milk.
Oh, yeah.
Cut him down,
Let's make sure this is looking up and down. That's the word. You know that saying L'chaim to a Jew has a carpal effect. He's a meister by the Mezuk Shemagi. He told me he was Hasidim. He says, when you go home, stop at every town and make a L'chaim. So it took him a long time to get home. So he came home, his wife said, well, with me. The story of the small monkeys. The famous story of small monkeys, where his wife sent him, his two uses, sent him to get a dozen eggs or get him milk. And on the way, he met some Hasidim where he can run to the Alter Rebbe. Oh, he has to go to the Alter Rebbe. So he stayed with the Alter Rebbe a long time. Finally, he came home, and he suddenly remembered his wife told him to buy eggs, milk. He came into the house, he dropped it, and he says to his wife, see what happens when you rush? A lot of stories about Shmuel Munkis, which for another time. But this one is going to get to us. So the Mezuk Shemagid had told his chassid, every city he goes in, he should make a l'chaim. So he told his wife, didn't know why. At the end of the year, he goes back to the Mezuk Shemagid, and the Mezuk Shemagid tells him, he says, you know that there was a gezerah, that there was a decree, a heavenly decree against you, that you're going to die this year. But when so many Jews wished you l'chaim, it was taken away. So when we wish each other l'chaim, it's not who are we to wish a l'chaim. You're a Jew, you're a godly soul. It has an effect. So everybody l'chaim, people who need a parnasa tov, shalom bayis, and gesund, and anything that you need, you should have it put to l'chaim. Somebody mentioned about Koach Sivan. Again, so let me tell you an interesting thing about it. When the Rabbi and Rebbetzin, when they came to the States, so first of all, the Frierdiker Rebbe sent some of the Elter Hasidim to meet him. They didn't want to go, because after all, they were Hasidim, they were, they owned him, etc. And they didn't feel that if the fellow was passionate to go to see, they should go and see him. The Rebbe took a siddur. If you look at the beginning of the siddur, it has all from the Droshim into Sefti, has the whole train of Torah all the way down. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said to them, he knows it all. The Rebbe's Gadlus in Torah was phenomenal. We all know that, many stories, etc. What I want to point out, in content of Chovchos, is the Frierdiker Rebbe did not see the Rebbe and Rebbetzin for 3 days. And that's the question, why not? So you find a Maisa by Yaakov, when Yaakov met Yosef. It says that Yosef threw himself on his father's neck, he was crying. He said, what was Yaakov doing? Yaakov was saying Shema. In other words, the ava that he had towards his son, this is the ava, he realized this should be the ava towards Hashem. The Rebbe Rashab once, he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe asleep, and he wanted to kiss him. How did he translate that feeling of ava? He wrote a mimer for him. So this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe did. The ava that he had for his son-in-law and for his daughter was so great, but this is the ava he has to have for Hashem. So for 3 days, he actually didn't make. Let's get back to this idea of Melech. It's interesting, in this week's Parsha, we also have the Moshe fell on his face. Koach came to him, and Moshe fell on his face, and we have a Rashi. I'm not going to into detail, but one of the areas that the Rebbe was known for was his explanation of Rashi, and the greater a person is, the lower he can lower himself. So even though many people, well, it's only a Rashi, what's Rashi? On the contrary, the Rebbe showed us the greatness of Rashi. In Rashi is both the simple level of Peshat and the highest levels of the Tzidus Kabbalah. And Rashi says, V'yikach Korach, and Rashi says, Parsha zu yofen Midrashes from Midrash Rabbi Tanchuma. This Parsha is well darshaned in Midrash Rabbi Tanchuma. And then he repeats again, V'yikach Korach again. As the Rebbe asks, first of all, what does it mean, yofen Midrashes from Midrash Tanchuma? Rashi's pshat is the explanation is Alpi pshat. It's not medrash. And what does it mean? Yofen midrashis you don't find other midrashim that are yofen, that are beautiful. And also, why does he repeat Vayikach Korach, and then he gives an explanation of what was actually going on. And later on, he says, Omar Ra Korach Chalok in Moshe. What did Korach see? To Miracholak and Moshe. Who's this dissension coming from? After all, Koach was a great person. And he says, Niskana al Nisyoso shel Elitzophen shel Uziel. He was jealous on the fact that Elitzophen, that Uziel was appointed as the Nasi. Shemina Moshe Nasi al Bnei Kas, he was appointed on Bnei Kas, al Piyadibu, the command of God. Koach said, Ache Abba Hayu, says, my father had four brothers. Shneim, like he says, the Bnei Kas, etc. Amram was the before. He took his 2 children to Gedolah. Echad Melech, Echad Kohen Gadol. So who should be the next one? Should have been me. Me Roy Little as Ashnia. Who should have taken the second one? Lo Ani shouldn't have been me. Shani Ben Yitzhak, I am Ben Yitzhak, the second to Amram. Now, the question that actually Rashi has is on the Parsha. And therefore Rashi says, this whole Parsha presents a problem. But there is a Medrash Tanchuma, which is Yofen Midrash, which means that there's a Medrash which is closer to Peshat on the Parsha, which we can answer 2 main questions, and the what are the 2 main questions? The first one is, what was Korach gaining? What was the benefit to him? Korach, he already had a high position in the house. And if he was against anybody being an os, anybody being a leader, he's going to lose it. So what was the problem? Therefore, that's why Rashi says again, V'ikach Korach, It's the problem is Koach himself is the problem. What was he going to gain? And the other one is, why did Koach wait so long to disagree with Moshe Rabbeinu? Why did he wait until to argue with him? He should have all argued with him as soon as Aaron was the Kohen Gadol, Moshe was the leader. Argue then. Why wait so many years? So Rashi says, and there's another sikha by the Rabbi, that he waited until he had an argument. If he would have argued earlier, it would have looked like he was doing it for himself. But now he had an argument to prove to the Sanhedrin, it's not me, it's you. And what was his argument? The argument was that Moshe is doing something that is not right. In another sikha, the Rebbe mentions that this parsha comes after the Meraglim. What they were from the Meraglim, and they didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael. They considered as learning Torah the main thing, and they were told, no, the main thing is going into Eretz Yisrael, and the main thing is Maisa. So after the Meraglim, Koach thought, I have a title now. If the main thing is Maisa, is action, then Moshe Rabbeinu, why are you such a leader? You have no right to be such a leader. Nevertheless, Moshe said, you're right, but the way that Moshe does a mitzvah and the light he brings into it is much greater. What Koach was arguing was not there should be no leaders. That wasn't his argument. What his argument was, there should be no leaders like Moshe Rabbeinu. He was a melech, he was a king, he was completely removed from the people. And when he came to argue against Moshe Rabbeinu, what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He fell on his face. Why did he fall on his face? It was similar to the Alter Rebbe falling on his face. Moshe Rabbeinu thought, is he coming to tell me there's a problem with me or there's a problem with him? So he put his head on his hand. And he realized the problem was with Torah. That there has to be a melech, there has to be a nasi, etc., etc. So it's apropos that this week when we have the Tammuz and we think of the Rebbe who was a melech, that we have this argument of Korah. Now I told a story on Shabbos with Rabbi Gutnick and Rabbi Gifter, and the understanding of that story is in the Parsha. This idea of melech. And I saw this as well many years through yeshiva, through non-Lubavitch yeshivas. And very quickly, how many people heard the story on Shabbos? How many people didn't hear the story? All right, I'll do it very quickly. So once, Rabbi Gutnick was going to a gathering of rabbis in America, and the Rebbe said to him, when you go there, ask Rabbi Gifter what he has against me. And Rabbi Gutnick felt a little bit awkward, asking Rabbi Gifter was a Rosh Yeshiva. Rabbi Gifter was one of the Rosh Yeshivas, one of the members of the Moshe Gidol Torah. He was he tells, so he was a great person. It wasn't stammers like people asking me a question. He was a great person, a great Rosh Yeshiva. He was world renowned. And you see how significant the answer is. So Gutnick goes to this gathering, and he hopes he would not have to sit next to him, but Hashgacha Pratis, he sat next to him, so he had no excuse. So he said to him, I have a question from the Rebbe. What's the question? He says, what do you have against the Rebbe? And Rabbi Gifter said, I have two problems. One problem is, he doesn't ask the Moshe Gidol Torah, he doesn't ask the Gedolim for any advice. Everything else is himself. And the other thing is, why does he make such a big deal of Diru B'Tachtonim? Doesn't say in the Gemara anywhere. Diru B'Tachtonim makes a big deal out of it. So when Rabbi Gutnick came back to the Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe the two answers, the Rebbe smiled, and he said, if he doesn't understand what Diru B'Tachtonim is, the whole purpose of creation, Diru B'Tachtonim, I should ask their advice. But with Pashas Korach, you have an understanding of where they're coming from. And this is without Chassidus, you have this problem. And I saw this in Yeshiva. Before I repented and became Lubavitch, as I fellow people who came from the other yeshivas. And I don't want to not give the yeshivas the bachrim, the good bachrim, the lit, etc. But without chassidus, in our times you're lost, literally lost. And they couldn't understand that there could be a person like a Rebbe who's a melech, who was so far removed from everybody else, he didn't have to ask advice. He was the Rebbe, he was the melech. Can you imagine telling the king, go and ask advice? He's the melech, there's a distance. That distance they could not understand. And therefore this Rabbi Gifter said, why is there a distance? Why doesn't he ask us our advice? But he doesn't ask us. He does everything himself. And you see, this was the problem Koach had, this distance. Actually, the source of that, where there is a feeling of mitzias, and without chassidus, you have a feeling of I, of mitzias. You're important. And the idea of a chassid, what a chassid is an extension of the Rebbe. A chassid is not a person by himself. He's an extension of the Rebbe. What does that mean? When you're walking along the street, people should recognize you not only as a chassid, but as a Lubavitcher chassid. There goes a Lubavitcher chassid. I have in my talus bag, in front of my talus bag, the big picture of the Rebbe. So whenever I go into other shuls, I went into one particular shul, there was a guy, I never seen him smile, which is also a machlok, not really chassidus. Never saw him smile. And he sees the picture of the Rebbe and he says, who do you pray to? So I was going to say to him, who do you pray to? But I just, I ignored it. Yeah, control myself. It wasn't so easy, by the way. And when you're proud of something, you show it. When you meet somebody in the street, I go sometimes to a shtibel, a Hasidic shtibel, public shtibel, people that are very nice, very warm. And I take advantage of telling them a Rashi or telling them something the Rebbe said. And they say, really? Where did you hear that from? They're impressed. They don't hear anything like that. So when you're proud of something, you spread it around. How does one connect with the Rebbe? First thing is that you learn his Torah. It says Tzadikim during the Boram, that Tzadik is similar to the Creator, just like that put his nefesh into the Torah. Anochi, Adonafshi, Ovis Kesovis, I put my soul into the Torah. So the Tzadik puts himself, his essence, into the Torah. There's a master by the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe once met Rabbi from Mezibos. Rabbi from Mezibos was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He was a great tzaddik, and he had great respect for each other. Actually, one time the Pinchas Rises, who was one of the greatest of the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, was once with the Alter Rebbe, and they met Rabbi from Mezibos. And the Alter Rebbe was speaking to Rabbi, and Rabbi could get angry. You have to tell me he could get angry. And Reb Pinchas was afraid he was going to get angry with the Alter Rebbe. And he stood in the middle. And he was, okay guys, that's enough. And the Alter Rebbe said to Reb Pinchas, if you wouldn't be in such a close chassid of mine, I would have become very angry with you. You should know that the machlokes between Reb Baruch and myself is the same machlokes that between Dovid HaMelech and Shaul HaMelech. It was not a simple thing. One time, one of the Chassidim of Reb Baruch and Mezibos found or heard that the Alter Rebbe was coming to town. And he thought to himself, if I stay in town, how can I go not see the Alter Rebbe? So, because he was a Chassid of Reb Baruch and Mezibos, he decided he's going to leave. So where will he go? He'll go to the next town. So he goes to the next town, and lo and behold, who does he meet? He meets Reb Baruch and Mezibos. His Rebbe. And the Rebbe said to him, what are you doing here? So he said, because the Litvak, the Alter Rebbe used to be called the Litvak, and it wasn't such a nice expression this was he was using, the Litvak is coming to town, And I thought it wouldn't be right that I should stay there, so I left. And the Rebbe said to him, you have lost Olam Hazeh and you have lost Olam Haba. Because you insulted the Alter Rebbe like that, you've lost everything. And so the Chassid broke down, he cried, and the Baruch said, I can't do anything for him. The only tikkun you have is go to the Alter Rebbe himself and ask for forgiveness. He went to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe says, okay, you have Olam Hazeh, you have Olam Hazeh, you make a living and that's it. So they had great regard one for the other. So the Alter Rebbe said to Rabbi Mezibos, he says, you are the Baal Shem Tov's physical grandchild, I am his spiritual grandchild. What was the Alter Rebbe telling Rabbi? Wasn't some a story. He was telling him as follows. There was a machlokes between the Chassidim of the Beshet Shemagid, whether Chassidus that was revealed by the Baal Shem Tov, etc., should that be spread to everybody or only kept by the Rebbe? And most of the other tzaddikim held it's for the Rebbe and that's it, but not for the Chassidim. And as you see, if you look at the other Hasidic sects, is what did they emphasize? They emphasized Ligla. They have Hasidus, they have books on Hasidus, but for example, before learning, what do they do before learning? They sit down and learn a page of Gemara. I once met the Rosh Hashiva of Nei Yisrael, and he wasn't bad. He actually did write to the Rebbe for some advice, and he's telling me, I tried to get to learn a Tanya Shir there, in the yeshiva there, and he didn't want it. And he said to me, how does he prepare for davening? He learns a shtickle toistus with the Rashbam and the Rishonim, etc. I thought, give up. Anyway, how do we prepare for davening? Chassidus. The Chafetz Chaim once came to the Rebbe Rashab, and he says, I have a problem. I'm trying to get my bochrim to grow a beard. I can't get them to grow a beard. How do you get your bochrim to grow a beard? And the Rebbe Rashab said, I don't have to. It's automatic. I learn Chassidus, they know what's right. By you, they don't understand what a beard is, so you have a problem. What the Alter Rebbe was saying to Rabbi Mezibos is like this. We have a difference of opinion. Your opinion is that Chassidus is not for the ordinary person, it's for the tzaddik, it's for the Rebbe. My opinion is that it's for everybody. When it comes to physical things, you can be the poison. When it comes to spiritual things, I'm the poison. Why? Because I am the spiritual grandson of the Alter Rebbe. That of the Baal Shem Tov. Why is that important to us? Because you see that the connection that the Alter Rebbe had with the Baal Shem Tov was a deeper connection than even Reb Baruch, who was a grandchild, had with him. And you see that the learning a person's Torah, because the tzaddik puts himself into his Torah, the connection you have with the Rebbe when you learn his Torah is you connect with his essence. When the Mittler Rebbe, before he got married, so his father, the Alter Rebbe, sent him to Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev. By the way, it says that when you say stories of Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev, it invokes rachamim, mercy. So I guess because I'm talking here, you all need mercy, so I'll mention it. So he sent him for a bracha, the Mittler Rebbe, to Rabbi Yitzchak for a bracha. He didn't want to go. So he said, no, go for a bracha. Fine, he went to Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak got angry with him and he left. Came back and he says, no, do you get a bracha? He says, no. He says, I'll go with you. So the Alter Rebbe went with the Mittler Rebbe and he said to Rabbi Yitzchak, what do you have? What's the problem here? So he said the problem is that he says Chassidus, which he didn't hear from the Baal Shem Tov. Only if you heard it from the Baal Shem Tov can you say Chassidus. He has a right to say Chassidus. So the Alter Rebbe said, I heard Chassidus from the Mezrit Shemagid, and he heard it from the Baal Shem Tov. So the Chassidus that I have is from the Baal Shem Tov, and therefore the Chassidus that he has is from the Baal Shem Tov. So Rabbi Yitzchak said, no, let him say something. And we know the greatness of the Mittler Rebbe in Chassidus. So okay, his father told him he had to start saying Chassidus. And Rabbi Yitzchak, he couldn't take it. He said to the Alter Rebbe afterwards, he actually took his talus and he threw it over him. That the Menachim shouldn't see him, there shouldn't be any kitzur. So he said to the Alter Rabbi, where does he get this from? So the Alter Rabbi said to him, he has the soul of Rav Hamnuna. And if the Meshach Shemagid would not have told the Alter Rabbi to call him by his name, then he would have called him Hamnuna. So what can you see from this? You see from this that the Rebbe is connected with the Alter Rebbe is the first and the end, that we have the essence. When we learn the Rebbe's Torah, we have the essence of the Rebbe, etc. So the first thing is to learn is Maimorim, learn the Sichas, at least once a week. The next thing is Chittas, to follow what the Rebbe told us. Chittas is important. Whenever I used to write to the Rebbe initially, when I came to 770, I didn't understand the importance of Chittas. The Rebbe would write at the bottom, he says, Chittas shava l'chol nefesh. Everybody should learn Chittas. It makes no difference. It's relevant to everybody. The other thing is, the thing the Rebbe stressed was Ahavas Yisrael, loving a fellow Jew. And loving a fellow Jew, we saw by the Rebbe, that was admirably died. The Rebbe loved everybody. When it came to a time of dollars, the Rebbe showed respect for every individual, even a Havas Jew. A woman once asked the Rebbe, how can you stand for hours giving out dollars? Now the Rebbe was going on for 90 already. And notice the Rebbe didn't sit, he stood. Why did the Rebbe stand? Because he had respect for everybody. So the woman said to him, how can you stand for so many hours giving out dollars? And the Rebbe said, when you're counting diamonds, then it doesn't bother you. It's important. So the Rebbe looked at every single individual literally as a diamond. How do we look at our fellow Jew? Hopefully as a diamond. Achdus, unity. Oneness. Why was the Beis Hamikdash destroyed? One of the gentlemen gave me a sheet before to mention some of these things. I'll mention them. Why was the Beis Hamikdash destroyed? Because of sinas chinam. One Jew didn't like the other for no reason. There was hate. Didn't like him. How many times have you met people and just by their face you don't like them? Now think about it. Is that right? You don't like them? He's a Jew. So what is the antidote to that? Is Avas Kina. Is to love every Jew regardless. Even a Jew you haven't seen. The Rebbe had contact with Jews all over the world he had never seen. Once somebody asked the Rebbetzin, does the Rebbe sleep at night? And the Rebbetzin says, no. How can he sleep? He worries about this Jew 3,000 miles, this problem. He worries about this other Jew, etc. To be a Rebbe is a terrible job. Terrible job. The Rebbe initially didn't want to accept the Nasias. Because when you're a Nasi, you worry about everybody. Everybody's problem is your problem. And that's what the Rebbe had a very, very difficult time. He was worried about everybody. He would sometimes send Hasidim to places where there was maybe one Jew, one story. Remember, many stories, he told the Hasidim to go to this, take matzah, the first Jew you see, give it to him. So he went to a place, who knows where it was, and the sticks over there, couldn't find a Jew. Finally, somebody says, you know what, there's a guy who works in a store, where does he think that maybe he's Jewish? So the chassid goes into the store, and he said to the guy, are you Jewish? Yeah, I have matzah from the Rebbe. The guy started to cry. Why did he start to cry? So he said, you should know, I've been alone for many, many years. And I decided to get married. I met this woman who was not Jewish. And I really had a question, should I marry her or not? So I asked God for a sign. If God sends me a sign that I shouldn't do it, I won't do it. This is the sign. This the Rebbe saw. This was a Jew the Rebbe had never seen. And yet this was somebody who was very important. Many, many stories. Yeah,
away from the heater. It's better if we put it closer. There's a lot of space over there.
I've done it.
Told an amazing thing. Villa Parich was one of the greatest of the Hasidim. They called him a half a Chassid. Some say it's because he was half a Rebbe. He was a tzaddik. And he was, by the time he was 13 years of age, he was a Baki in Shas and Poskim. By the time he was 15 years old, he was a Baki of Kisrei Harizal. So he was a great scholar. And he was once by the Tzemach Tzedek. He was many times by the Tzemach Tzedek. But this particular story has a relevance to us. And the Samach Tzedek was speaking about the Rebbeim. And he says, the Mezrit Shemagid was greater than Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe was greater than the Mezrit Shemagid. And the Mittler Rebbe was greater than the Alter Rebbe. And he stopped. And Rabbi Hillel said, and the Samach Tzedek was greater than the Mittler Rebbe. And the Samach Tzedek didn't say that. Which means, and we have a general cloud, each Rebbe is a Malay Mokum of the other. But when you have the Rebbe, you have everybody. Literally. So when you connect with the Rebbe, you're connecting with every Rebbe of Lubavitch. Also the Mezrit Shemagid and the Baal Shem Tov too. I want to share with you my own experience with the Rebbe. And I'm sure everybody here, many people here have their own experience. But it's something that I think is important. When I first came to Lubavitch, I came from non-Hasidic yeshivas, etc. And I remember sitting in the Beis HaMedrash. The culture was very different from there. And I was learning with my chava. I remember two guys were talking next to me, schmoozing. And Rabbi Shalom, the Rosh Hashiva, walked in. And I said to the guy next to me, I said, the Rosh Hashiva's walking in. He looked at me and said, so what? It blew my mind. At least pretend. It was a completely different culture. My first Yechidus was very strange.
What year?
This was in 1964, 65. My first Yechidus was very strange. I'd only been in Lubavitch maybe 3 months. It was my birthday. And I wasn't expecting anything. I went into Yechidus and I had some questions. One question I remember I asked the Rebbe was, if I'm davening with the minyan that's davening too fast, what do I do? When the Rebbe began to answer my questions, it was very strange, because he became me. In other words, it was like I was sitting opposite myself. And it wasn't I was reading things into it. I wasn't expecting anything. And I thought to myself, what's happening here? This is me. I saw myself. I saw my personality. I saw everything. Not that I liked what I saw, but I saw myself. And then the Rebbe turned to the side, and he started to talk to the wall, like my wife does when she speaks to me. Speak to the wall. And he started saying things about chinuch. And I didn't understand what the Rebbe was saying at the time. Later on, it hit me what the Rebbe was talking about. And then when I asked the Rebbe a bracha, and he said the bracha he gave me was you should get a good shidduch. And the proof that my shidduch was from the Rebbe is because my wife, she has a very good eye for people. She can size them up very quickly. And she still agreed to marry me. So I said, that's the Rebbe's bracha, 100%. And the answer to the question of what do you do when the minyan is davening quickly and you can't keep up with the minyan, the Rebbe didn't say start early and get to Shmona Esrei with the minyan. The Rebbe said begin hodu with the minyan and go your own speed. And something that I notice is that people tend to not necessarily do this. Another thing that I've noticed in many places is when it's in davening, is you take a sefer and you start learning. The Rebbe said that he knew that there was a Yetzer Hara. He didn't know there was a Chassidish Yetzer Hara. Chassidish Yetzer Hara is when in the middle of davening you have to have a tremendous desire to learn Chassidus. That's a no-no. That's the Yetzer Hara. When I got married, I went into Yechidus with my wife. And at that time, I was in London, Ontario with Dr. Bloch. I was a rabbi of the synagogue there. I was in the university there. So my profession was anything other than insurance. Right in the middle of Yechidus, the Rebbe looked at me and he smiled and he said to me, are you interested in insurance? I couldn't say anything. My wife said to the Rebbe, what does my husband know about selling insurance? And the Rebbe didn't answer, he kept quiet. And I forgot about it. 3 years later, I came to Toronto, and at that time I was in graduate school, university there, and I met a Lubavitcher He wanted to start a Hebrew school. So fine, we started a Hebrew school. We had 350 kids for like 14 years, in addition to my regular job. And here's the Hashgacha Pratis. He was an actuary. An actuary is a guy who works with figures. You know, they say the difference between an American actuary and an Italian actuary is an American actuary can tell you about how many people are going to die next year. An Italian actuary can give you the names. So we started a school, and I was already traveling to a different city, and it was a snow belt area. And for no reason I said to him, it's difficult to travel. And a couple of weeks later, he said a position opened up in his company, insurance company. If I'm interested, I can have it. And first of all, I said, no, what do I do insurance? 2 weeks later, he said a position opened up in his department, which is the mathematics department. If I'm interested, I can have it. And suddenly it hit me, the Rebbe said insurance 3 years earlier. So I said, yeah, that's what the Rebbe wants me to do, and I took it. I had many, many interesting stories in the company, and for one particular one, you can see why the Rebbe wanted me to be there. When I started in the company, so I started a class at lunchtime, and we learned Talmud. One day a guy comes to me, I'd never seen the guy before. And he said, somebody just joined the company, he would like to join your class. I was fine, introduced me to him. I went to the guy, there's no way he would have known about it, he wasn't religious, he didn't know anything about a class. So I said, look, I give a class in Talmud at lunchtime, if you're interested, why don't you come, I explain it, you don't have to know anything. He said, I'll ask my wife, and I thought, forget about it. Next day I go to this guy, and he says his wife thinks it's a good idea. He starts coming once, and then twice, he buys tefillin. The whole family becomes religious. They send their children to religious Jewish schools. I learned with him for many years afterwards. And then I said to him, not long ago, I said, you know the guy that introduced us? Did you ever see the guy before? He said, no. Did you ever see him afterwards? No. I have no clue who the guy was. Never saw him before and again. For that one story alone, it was worth me joining the company. Now, as I said, I had contact not only with Jews, but I have the non-Jews. And wherever you're in, you have to look at it as a shlichus. I looked at the insurance company not as a job, as a shlichus. I was talking about Ahavas Yisrael, and I'll tell you this story, which is important. What does Ahavas Yisrael really mean? If you see a Jew wearing tefillin, and the tefillin are down here, does it bother you? It should. It should bother you because he's not wearing tefillin. You should go over. There's different ways of approaching this. If he's got a hammer in his hand, be careful. But in general, you take your mirror and you say, show him that they're not. Sometimes they'll thank you. Sometimes I've had the occasion where he said, I'm not interested, fine. At least I've told him. It should bother you. See, a house doesn't have a mezuzah, you go in, it should bother you. All these things should bother you. Just as Ahavas Yisrael. The person, you should feel sorry for the person. How should you feel about a person who's not religious? Just feel sorry. You have to have rachmanis. Not angry, rachmanis. Not their fault. I was working in human resources for a while. How I got into that was also Hashgacha Pratis, we go into now. But in this human resources, there was a woman, an elderly woman, she's not Jewish, and she told me that a week on Friday, her mother's going to have a leg amputated. I guess she didn't have a leg to stand on. But I wouldn't have said that to her. So I gave her a book on the Rebbe, which was after Gimel Tammuz. And I said that there's a tzaddik, his grave is in New York, etc., etc. I will write to the oil for you and ask for a blessing for your mother. Now the amazing thing is, this person didn't say to me, I'm not Jewish, it's not my religion, so thank you very much. So I faxed to the oil, and 2 days later, I forgot about it, 2 days later, I get a call from this woman's other daughter, and she says, I want to thank you for the miracle. That's what we're talking about. She says 2 days or a day after I faxed to the oil, the nurses came in. All they were doing is changing the bandages. There's nothing they could do for her. They took off the bandages, the leg started to heal, and they don't know why. And they had many stories like that. I remember one guy, I knew he was Jewish because he always ignored me. I used to give out on Friday the l'chaim to the Jewish people there before Pesach. She would give them matzah. I remember to one woman, I'd been doing this for 4 years, every Friday giving the l'chaim before Pesach and selling the chametz. So I went to before Pesach, and I said, you know, it's before Pesach, you have to sell the chametz, fine. Here's the l'chaim, here's some matzah. And she says, can I ask you a question? So sure, she says, you know I'm not Jewish. Give me the matzah back, that costs money. The l'chaim you can keep. But another amazing story, and I once noticed that there was a particular woman, nice lady, and she wasn't looking too happy. So I said to her, what's the problem? She says her husband's sick, unfortunately he has cancer. So I said, you know, there's a famous rabbi, famous scholar, sage in New York, and his blessings are very powerful. I will fax to New York for your husband. And I gave her a picture of the Rebbe, by the way. What I do now in Toronto is I do a lot of hashgacha, so I go to many places. And the CEO doesn't know this. But whenever I go to a place, I ask the guy, how's business? Whether it's Jewish or not. Ah, it's not so good. Oh, you know what? I go to this rabbi in New York, I'll ask for a blessing for you. Here's a picture of the rabbi. And whenever I go into their places, they have this picture of the Rebbe on the desk. They're not Jewish, these people. But they know, they can see there's something here. Anyway, so this woman, she had something very, very strange. So I faxed, the husband did get better. And then she said to me, one day I said, I'm going to New York. She said, look, I really appreciate it. She said, you know, for some reason, I have a feeling towards your Rebbe. This is a non-Jew. She says, the person my leader, who you can imagine who that is, the Romans call him Avi Avos Satuma. He says, all he does is collect money. You know that. But she said she had this feeling to the Rebbe. Look at the leaders that we have around us. And we see, what do they love? They love money, pride, low lives. Which reminds me of a funny story. I'll keep you awake. This guy had a shul, and in the shul there was 2 members. And these 2 members are the lowest of the low. And one of them passed away. And the other one came to the rabbi, and his rabbi, he says, look, do me a favor. He says, you know, you have a building fund. I will give you a $100,000 check if when you speak about my brother tomorrow, you say it was a mensch. So the rabbi thought about it. Who can refuse $100,000 building fund? What do you need here for the heater? $30,000? $60,000.
Maybe more.
No. So anyway, so the rabbi thought about it, he took the check. Next day he stands up, he's giving an esper, and he says, gentlemen, he says, Moshe, who passed away, was an absolute lowlife. I can't think of anything good that he did in his whole life. But compared to his brother, he was a mensch. Two stories. We know the greatness of the Rebbe, and these 2 people actually knew. One was Rav Hirschsprung of Shalom. He was the chief rabbi of Montreal. I knew his son-in-law. And when he first came to the Rebbe, he was known far and wide that he was a Baki B'Shas, and Postim, he was a great lander. And he came to the Rebbe the first time, and he wanted to speak to the Rebbe. Davening, the Rebbe says, not the time. He says, do you ever have any questions in learning? The Rebbe Hirschsprung said, I have a question in Yerushalmi. I've asked many, Gedolim, they couldn't answer. And the Rebbe said, no, if they couldn't answer, I can answer. Ask me anyway. So he said, to understand the question, you had to be a genius. And normally when you ask somebody a difficult question, you see they frown and they're concentrating, and the Rebbe was sitting. After he asked the question, the Rebbe said, the reason you have a problem is because there's a particular word, if you change the vowels, you don't have the problem. Once he was talking to the Rebbe, they had a discussion how many times it says a certain word in Shas. So he said, let's say 90, the Rebbe said 90 words. 90. The Rebbe was got Gemara, and in some abstruse little note on the side, this word was there. The other one was a a well-known rabbi at the time, a Rabbi Medalier. He was a guy, he was also Baki B'Shas, and he could put a pin in a Gemara, and he would tell you what the word was. He became the chief rabbi of Antwerp, and he was a Baki B'Shas. He was the rabbi of Leeds, where I was born. And he used to come to visit the Rebbe. So once he came in, and he actually told us, he says to us, okay, give me a page in the Gemara, I think we'll learn Kedushin, not lying, and he told us the word. And then he said, when I came to the Rebbe, I had a question in Pidyon Aben. He didn't say what the question was. And I had asked many great scholars, and he couldn't answer. He said, I came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered me straight away. People came from Gateshead, they had a koilel, a well-known koilel in Gateshead. So there's one of the great learners there, once came to the Rebbe, he had prepared a whole question. He came to the Rebbe, and when he came out, they said, no. He had nothing to say about the Rebbe. In the words, he saw that there was no question. So the Rebbe was a malach, he was a king in learning, he was a king in between Adam and Chaveiro. The Rebbe had great sensitivity to everybody. Mr. Rappel, Shalom, from Toronto, he once went into the Rebbe, and he was going to Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe said to Mr. Rappel, did you, because his wife unfortunately was sick, she wasn't going, the Rebbe said, did you buy a ticket for your wife? And he said, no. The Rebbe said, buy a ticket for your wife. The fact that she knows there's a ticket, she won't feel bad. So the Rebbe was sensitive to everybody's needs, regardless of who they were. And when you were in front of the Rebbe, nobody else existed. You hear this from everybody. Regardless of who you are, you were the only person that existed. And because the Rebbe was an Neshama Klolis, he was a soul that contained the souls of the whole generation of every Jew, so he could relate to you better than you could relate to yourself. And I'll finish off with a very quick Maisa, which shows how the Rebbe was able to relate and affect everybody. You may have heard this Maisa, but it's worth repeating. There was a guy in France, and he used to learn with a Lubavitcher, Chabadnik, for many months, and he suddenly stopped coming. And finally they met, and the Chabad guy said, where have you been? He says, well, he said, I met a girl, we're getting married, she's not Jewish, I didn't think he was right that I should continue learning with you. So this Chabad guy said, we have a custom that before you get married, we go to the Rebbe for a blessing. Why don't you come with me to the Rebbe and ask for a blessing? So the guy said, okay, fine. So he went to the Rebbe. Now, if the guy would have come to you, what would you have said? You would have said, you realize what you're doing? You're destroying the Jewish people. Angry with him. The Rebbe didn't say that. The Rebbe said to him, I'm jealous of you. And he said to him, jealous of me? Why? He says, because you have a test that I don't have. You have a very difficult test. And anybody who's been involved, Rahman Islam, with this kind of thing, you know that once it gets to that stage where they decide to get married, it's almost impossible to stop it, because emotionally, they're so involved. Seichel doesn't come into it. And the Rebbe said to this person, you have a test which is so difficult, and God doesn't give tests to people who can't overcome them. So you must have an amazing ability to overcome this test. The guy left the Rebbe, he sat down and he began to cry. And he overcame the test. He broke up. The bottom line is, are we doing what the Rebbe wants us to do? Are we living like Hasidim? Are we helping to bring Mashiach? The purpose of the Rebbe was that we should bring Mashiach. No, he should. The Rebbe said, I did all I could, you have to bring it. Remember your chittas, remember davening with the minyan is important. Mikveh in the morning, going to the mikveh is not just a question if a person's unclean, etc. As the Alter Rebbe says, when you go to the mikveh in the morning, your prayer answers much easier. There's the importance of mikveh every morning, and all the other ways we connect to the Rebbe. I don't say you should take upon yourself everything now, but choose one thing to improve, one thing to take upon yourself, and that's this whole Farbrengen with the So l'chaim edidayin. And we surely meet on simchas and applications.
Thank you.